This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Emily Brass. Janet Stewart is back tomorrow. A new program aims to grow Winnipeg's tree canopy while deepening community roots. The city and federal government announced funding for local groups to launch planting projects. CBC's Cameron McLean reports it's part of a nationwide initiative that aims to plant 2 billion trees.
It's a common sight in Winnipeg's older neighborhoods, trees marked for removal, often due to disease. Today, the city announced a program giving up to $20,000 each to groups that want to plant trees. Mayor Scott Gillingham says it's a way to protect what he called one of Winnipeg's treasures.
But we also know that Winnipeg's tree canopy remains vulnerable to normal mortality, but also to damage and disease.
A total of $180,000 is available through the program. Projects in areas with higher rates of poverty will get priority, including in older neighborhoods like here in the West End.
Our older communities are, characterized with those beautiful, majestic elm-lined streets. But in terms of accessibility, not everybody has the luxury of traveling to other parks or regional park spaces or other natural areas. So.
Each year, the city of Winnipeg replaces only about 20% of the trees that it loses each year. This year, they hope to plant more than 10,000, with about 400 of those coming from the funding announced today. It'll take many years for those trees to reach as big as this one, but the city needs to start planting now if it ever hopes to catch up. The funding comes from the federal government's 2 Billion Trees initiative. It's expected to give the city more than $7 million for tree projects over the next 5 years.
We're losing trees way faster than we can get them in the ground. So knowing that this money is available from the feds to get that work done is critically important.
We just throw it on each other, right?
Former Mayor Brian Bowman declared a goal of planting 1 million trees in 20 years. This new funding will take the city one step closer to reaching that. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
RCMP are searching for a teenager wanted in connection to a double homicide in the Paw. Police warn Ernest Lloyd Campbell is armed and dangerous and should not be approached. The 17-year-old faces 2 charges of second-degree murder connected to the double homicide on January 15th. Anyone who knows where Campbell might be is asked to call 911. To see a picture of him, head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, Crown prosecutors will not proceed with 6 sexual assault charges against a doctor from St. Anne. A Winnipeg court heard the Crown stayed the charges against Dr. Arcel Bissonnette after assessing new evidence. Bissonnette was facing 6 charges for alleged assaults on female patients when he worked in St. Anne. The trial was supposed to start last week, but was delayed to address evidence that may have been lost or destroyed. Bissonnette is facing another 16 counts of sexual assault to be tried separately. Well, it's been a busy day for the Bear Clan Patrol. They were out earlier searching for a missing woman, and right now they're getting ready to go out on a second search. CBC's Stephanie Cram is at their headquarters and joins us live. Stephanie, who are they searching for today?
I'm here at the Bear Clan office where they're about to start the search for Latanya Tate. The family is going to arrive any moment now. But earlier today, I caught up with the Bear Clan Patrol in the West Broadway neighborhood for another search. They were there to search for Ashley Shingoose, who was last seen March 2022 in the area of 180 Henry Avenue. Here's Bear Clan's Executive Director, Kevin Walker.
She's been missing for quite a while now, and it's becoming, a concern that she hasn't contacted anybody in a long time. So we're going to be out today with the family, and hopefully that we can drum up some leads with getting the posters up and having it on our social media platforms.
Now, Shingoose's family was also at the search today. Albert Shingoose, Ashley's father, only spoke to CBC very briefly to really stress how worried he is about his daughter.
My wife being worried about her daughter, and also me and her sisters want to know where their sister is. My wife wants to know where Ashley is. We'd like to find her. Please, anyone, call us. Let us know where she is. Thank you.
So, Stephanie, who is the search tonight focused on?
Tonight, the Bear Clan is heading out to search for Latanya Tate. Her family is coming from Thunder Bay. That's where she's originally from. Latanya was originally last seen in Winnipeg early this month on January 16th in the 1400 block of Portage Avenue. And I'm joined right now by Bear Clan's Kevin Walker, who joins me now. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
What area are you guys focusing the search on tonight?
Tonight we'll be searching with the family. We'll be going mobile tonight just to get out throughout the city. We're going to be checking some of the regular places that we have known to be frequented, and from there we'll be out in the next couple days as well.
Now, this is the second search for a second Indigenous woman today. What has the mood been like?
Oh, you know, in any of these searches, the emotions are high, the passion is high to have a good outcome. So what we're doing today is trying to be there, support the families that are involved, and to rally behind each other and get out there and do our best to find both the women.
And how are the families doing right now with regards to these searches?
You know, when you get involved in these searches, there's a lot of heart that goes into it. And, you know, I'm sure they're tired, I'm sure they're hungry, and I'm sure they're really wanting to bring their daughters home. So with us being part of it, offering our support and our resources, hopefully we're looking for a positive outcome.
Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Kevin Walker is the executive director of Bear Clan Patrol. They're going to be heading out any moment now to begin the search for Latanya Tate. Emily?
Thank you, Stephanie. That's CBC's Stephanie Cram. Well, changes are coming next year to school hours for some students in South Winnipeg, and they're being met with questions and concerns. The Pembina Trail School Division is adjusting start and end times to deal with increasing enrollment and transportation challenges. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, some worry the move will be disruptive.
Increasing enrollment and a shortage of buses and drivers is behind what some see as a major change.
Either way, the change in schedule will wreak havoc on working families.
In a letter this week obtained by CBC, the Pembina Trail School Division notified parents it's changing start and end times at 17 schools. Next year, students in 12 schools will begin their day at 9:15 in the morning and end at 3:45 in the afternoon. 5 other schools will start at 8:15 and dismiss students at 2:45.
Whether we're starting earlier or ending later, childcare will be an issue for many families.
Janet Murata has 2 sons who bike to Oakenwald Elementary School in spring and fall but get driven in the winter. The change means the school day will start 25 minutes later and last 10 minutes longer.
That late start will be challenging for those whose work days start earlier.
Several parents I spoke with say the changes won't impact them. Some say it's because they're a stay-at-home parent. Others are now working from home. Pembina Trail School Division Superintendent Lisa Bowles says in a statement the changes, which she acknowledged won't be easy, were first announced this past June. This combination of factors, including increasing student enrollment and a finite number of bus drivers, resulted in the approach we are currently taking, Bowles says. To deal with the problem this year, students are required to catch the bus at central stops so drivers can do more than one route.
Ultimately, the education system is there to educate our kids, so if we can find a way to keep it consistent and routine for the kids, I think that should be the priority.
Murata understands the division is in a difficult position, but wishes there was a different solution. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some victims of sexual assault are being turned away from a program that's meant to help them. The province's nurses union says that's because there isn't always a nurse available. As CBC's Ian Fraze explains, the province is being urged to act quickly.
When someone's been sexually assaulted, time matters. But in Manitoba, a specialized unit to treat those patients doesn't always have a nurse available.
Now imagine how these patients feel when they are told to go home and return at a later time when the program is staffed. Imagine being told not to shower, not to change your child's diaper, or to wipe after going to the washroom in an effort to preserve evidence that may affect the outcome of a court case. This is outrageous.
The nurses union says that happens weekly. The sexual assault nurse examiner or SANE program lacks enough staff to operate full-time.
The program has been held together by a small group of extremely dedicated nurses. Many of them hold a position elsewhere in the system and still manage to perform their SANE shifts because they are dedicated to this cause.
Last spring, the provincial government promised to expand the program. They'd hire a coordinator, 5 specially trained nurses, and set up satellite offices in Brandon, Le Pas, and Thompson. 9 months later, they say none of that has happened. Shared Health says this work is well underway, and it's hired 5 permanent nurses. Except the union says this is misleading. These new hires, they say, are not specialized, and it'll take up to a year to train them. Critics of the PC government say this specialized nursing is important.
I think we all understand that for many sexual assault survivors, speaking out and getting the help that they need takes tremendous courage.
We should be doing everything we can to help them and support them at a moment of crisis, and that's not happening, and that has not been happening for months.
Shared Health says it's working on training new nurses for this program. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Air travel is inching back closer to normal at Richardson International Airport. Passenger volumes were up last year at the airport. The Winnipeg Airports Authority says just over 3 million people flew in and out of the Manitoba capital in 2022. That's 2.5 times the passenger volume in 2021. But the airport still has a ways to go to fully recover from the pandemic. In 2019, the last year before the pandemic began, 4.5 million passengers traveled through Richardson. Special programs for sick kids at HSC's Children's Hospital are getting a boost thanks to the fundraising of a 12-year-old girl. Kira Davla was the Manitoba champion child for 2022. She was born with a disorder where the plates in her skull didn't fuse properly. Kira had her first of many surgeries at Children's when she was just 9 months old. Kira set a goal to raise $10,000 during her year as champion child. Well, she smashed that, bringing in more than $17,000.
Hi, my name is Kira. It feels amazing that I can just share my story and help and raise this money to help the kids in the hospital.
Every year our hospital identifies a remarkable child to act as a champion child. And this child is somebody with a remarkable story, a remarkable connection to our hospital, who really inspires the community, and it represents the children in our hospital that get served here.
When I was helped at the Children's Hospital through surgeries and specialists, I always felt safe and comfortable because the Child Life program was always there for me with fun activities to do. That's why I want to donate the money that I fundraised to help other kids who need to be in the hospital so they can have great support from the Child Life specialists and enjoy things like the music therapy and CHTV.
17,000.
I am so emotional, I guess, because I have put a lot of work into helping. It's been just amazing to be the champion child, and I can't wait to see what's in the future.
Well, I think there's a really bright future for Kira. What an amazing kid.
Absolutely.
CBC meteorologist John Sauder joins us now. So I put on my thicker parka today, John.
Yeah, good thing you did. Yeah, mid-minus 20s this morning, but the wind was nice and light today, so pretty comfortable. That's all going to change. I got a few things to talk about. Some snow, some blowing snow, and then some really, really cold weather. So get ready for it. Let's start with the current conditions. And the winds have gone dead calm at the airport now. We're at minus 14. So there really isn't a wind chill that adds to that at all. Pretty comfortable evening. And you know, the normal high is now minus 12. So minus 14, we can handle that. And you'll be saying that in the coming days when we look back at this minus 14 and say, yeah, I wish it was minus 14. 14 again. Yeah, clouds kind of thickened up again in the afternoon as expected. Not much action tonight, really. A few flurries up around Barons River, over around Swan River, but there's a kind of a look at the big picture. As we go into Futurecast, though, you'll see that that big picture is going to change as this next clipper moves across Saskatchewan tonight. You can see the evidence of that at the center of the low, just back towards, well, central parts of western Saskatchewan. The leading edge of the snow by tomorrow morning is just getting into Manitoba. And we'll look at some amounts through the show as well, but generally 2 to 4 across the north, maybe a little bit more, all depending on the speed of the system. This is a clipper. Faster it moves, less chance it has to drop a significant amount of snow. It looks like by the time we get to 11 a.m., this is well involved in the west, and then on into the mid-afternoon, we're seeing that snow here in the Red River Valley. I think it starts in Winnipeg around 2 o'clock or so, and then this continues through the evening as the system moves off to the east. And the snow will end sometime after midnight, Thursday into Friday, but that's when skies start to clear up as we move through the day Friday. The northwest winds develop, and we get that cold rush of air moving in just in time for the weekend. And by cold, well, I mean really cold, and it's pretty much the same numbers I showed you yesterday. So over the next 36 hours, most of the snow will be already on the ground by the time we get into early Friday morning. Latest model run slows the system down, so gives about 12 centimeters to Kenora, 9 in Winnipeg, 11s to the Interlake area, Portage la Prairie, and about 4 in Dauphin, more like 10 in Swan River. And wind is part of the story. It's pretty light right now, but as we get into the day tomorrow, you can see these colors into the red and the pink, and that's winds gusting close to 70 in Saskatchewan. By 2 p.m., we're looking at south winds here at about 40 to 50. And then as we move into the overnight period, the winds have shifted behind the cold front and are very strong in the Red River Valley. So late Thursday and right through the day Friday, that's when we're going to see some blowing snow in open areas. Tonight, though, just cloudy. Minus 19 in the morning, cloudy skies, and then we see that snow, blowing snow, south winds 30 to 50 on into the later part of the day. And then through Friday, the winds are northwest 30 to 50 as skies clear, falling temperatures, and very, very cold temperatures on the weekend. I'm expecting some extreme cold warnings to be issued for almost all of Manitoba by the weekend.
Better bundle up. Thanks, John.
You bet.
Earlier this week, we heard from a young woman who was attacked by a group while she was waiting for a bus. She called for more supports for young people to help them avoid turning to crime. Today, police said they've arrested 2 teens in connection with that incident. Advocates say Manitoba's youth need more access to positive and consistent role models. Mitch Bourbonniere is a community activist with extensive experience working with youth in the city core. He has some ideas about what's needed to help young people stay on the right track. I spoke with him earlier today. Mitch, it seems like we've been hearing of a lot of instances lately of youth getting involved in violent and sometimes even deadly crimes. What do you think when you see those headlines?
Well, it's certainly concerning, Emily, and it seems as such. In the past year, last summer, there was a couple of high-profile incidences, some incidences at the Forks, and of course, more recently at the library. So it's very concerning.
And what do you hear about youth nowadays, about challenges they might be facing and, you know, how maybe they get involved with these crimes?
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, and there's always been, you know, a certain number of our young people in Winnipeg that are at risk and have come from trauma and are struggling. So that's not new. But the level, I guess, of violence is concerning, and the age of the young people is concerning when we look at 13, 14-year-olds perpetuating these behaviors. It's really heartbreaking.
So that's a bit younger than it was before, you know, just based on what you've observed.
Yeah, there just seems to be a little more frequency of incidences, and they're very high intensity in terms of their the level of violence, and then of course the age seems to be younger. So anecdotally, I'm very worried.
And what impact did the pandemic have on access to resources that might help youth?
Well, as we all know, the pandemic had a great effect on all of us, our mental health, our services. And I think kids who were previously kind of marginal and disconnected and not quite going to school, not quite being visible, are now much more disconnected and finding one another in the community as well.
And you've talked before about a lack of mentorship for youth. Why is mentorship so important?
Well, again, anecdotally, I've spent my life training people and doing mentorship myself with young people. And I've seen with my own eyes the power of having a good adult in a young person's life has in terms of turning around at-risk youth, but also just guiding them into the future for a good life. I've seen how it works, and I believe in it.
And so, yeah, what does mentorship look like? Is it, you know, teaching them a skill, or is it just kind of hanging out together? What is it like?
Oh, it's a lot of things, but certainly those two things as well. I helped develop a program called Whistling Wind Action Therapy over the years. It's been running for 12 or 13 years, and we've been involved with hundreds of young people, some really high-profile situations as well. And it's a wraparound model where, you know, we become uncles and aunties, we become good adults in their life, they're able to access us, we're available off hours. We do land-based activities, we do volunteerism in the community, positive activism, we take kids out to ceremony and out on the land, and we provide guidance and protection and safety and love for these kids.
Wow, okay, and you've seen that make a difference, eh?
Hugely. And I've also seen some of these young people, because I've been doing it long enough, I've seen them grow up and then turn around and give back to the next generation with their lived experience. So that's been really heartwarming as well.
And so given the headlines we discussed with what seems to be more violence with younger and younger people, what would you like to see happen at this point?
Well, here's one thought I have. Action Therapy, for example, is just one program. Historically, we've been funded by CFS, a little bit by the criminal justice system, and more recently by Jordan's Principle. Not all children fall into those three categories. So I would like to see programs, mentorship programs like Action Therapy, be made available to all children that are struggling or are at risk. I think the three spots where people can identify at-risk children are certainly parents and families, schools definitely, and even communities that those children belong to, for example, newcomer communities, that kind of thing. So if we can partner, if we can fund and train and roll out more programs that provide mentorship, and if we can partner with schools and families and parents, I think we can identify young people before it gets to the place where they're doing these kinds of behaviors.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Mitch.
Thank you.
Still ahead, the Bank of Canada raised interest rates today for the 8th time in a row, but it might be the last hike for now. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The Bank of Canada announced an interest rate rise today, the 8th time in a row. That takes the key rate to 4.5%, but the central bank signaled this may be the last hike for now. CBC's Nisha Patel explains.
Another interest rate hike, but a new message.
We've raised rates rapidly, and now it's time to pause.
Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem says soaring prices are coming under control, with a forecast that inflation will fall to 3% by the middle of this year.
We are certainly seeing clear evidence, and that has reinforced our confidence that inflation's coming down. But look, we do have to be humble. There are a number of risks out there.
So he warned that if inflation surges again, the central bank could hike further. For now, though, higher interest rates are having an impact.
We are going to see some pain in the labor market, some pain in the housing market and the economy as a whole.
But with interest rates at their highest level in 15 years, mortgage brokers say it's a harsh reality for those with variable rate mortgages or who need to renew this year.
It's really getting messy out there, so people are concerned about how they're going to be able to afford the homes and if they're going to have to sell this year.
In February, I'll be paying a total of $5,077 every month.
That's keeping Mesbah Matab up at night. Since buying a home with a variable rate mortgage in 2021, his payments have jumped $1,600.
A lot of things had to be cut, sacrifices made in our lifestyle. So it's basically like I've taken a big pay cut. That's what I feel like.
Matab's family has stopped eating out and taking holidays. He says he had planned for higher rates, just not this much, this fast. And he's lost confidence in decision makers.
I would rather pay $10 a bread and have a house and a job than, be jobless and houseless and bread comes back to $2.
For now, he's taking it day by day. But if his finances get any worse, he'll be faced with some tough choices. So interest rates at these levels may be the new normal. And while hikes may be on pause for now, the Bank of Canada governor also said it's far too early to talk about interest rate cuts. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet have wrapped up their 3-day retreat in Hamilton, Ontario. The session was dominated by the economy and healthcare. And today, the Prime Minister announced he's invited the premiers to Ottawa next month to talk about a new healthcare deal. But he says this is just a first step.
It'll be a good moment for us to gather, but we're not going to be signing deals on that particular moment. It'll be about starting the very direct hard work of the bilateral arrangements that will happen with every province.
Trudeau says the federal government wants to move away from a one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare funding. He says there will still be some national elements, but much of the new plan will be tailored to the individual needs of each province and territory. The premiers have been calling on Ottawa to increase its share of healthcare budgets from around 22% up to 35%. The Commons Committee on Industry and Technology has been meeting today on the proposed Rogers takeover of Shaw Communications. It comes a day after the Federal Court of Appeal dismissed the Competition Bureau's bid to stop the deal. Among those addressing the committee were the heads of the two telecom giants. The president of Shaw insisted the merger will be good for competition. He says most of the opposition has been coming from Canada's other big telcos.
TELUS and Bell have been the most vocal opponents of these transactions, challenging them in every possible forum. As a result of the regulatory process, when these transactions close, TELUS and Bell will face the competition that they fear most.
Canadians pay some of the highest cell rates in the world, and there have been many complaints that the merger will reduce competition in the mobile phone market. The companies hope to complete the deal by the end of the month. Federal Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne still has to approve the merger. Canada's two national airlines appear to be turning themselves into regional carriers. Air Canada is concentrating on the eastern part of the country, while WestJet is focusing on the west. CBC's Kyle Bax explains.
There
has been quite a bit of attention on Air Canada making the decision to cut direct flights between Calgary and Saskatoon and also between Calgary and Regina. We've heard of many other cancelled routes, so we dug a little deeper. We looked at the schedules of both Air Canada and WestJet and compared it to the same time of year in 2019. Since then, both airlines have cut dozens of routes. For instance, out of Calgary, Air Canada no longer flies directly to 9 different cities, such as Medicine Hat and Victoria. Meanwhile, WestJet has made quite a few cuts in eastern Canada, specifically between Toronto and Montreal. It has slashed the amount of seats by about 80%. The trend is pretty clear. WestJet prioritizing the prairies and Air Canada concentrating on the east, especially Toronto and Montreal. Part of the reason why is because of competition from smaller airlines. There are new entrants that have been launched, and some of the existing players are expanding. Experts say this strategy by Air Canada and WestJet helps fend off competition.
The Canadian industry is growing by the number of players, but there is some moves afoot by the established carriers to kind of say, okay, we will create our own little fortresses and we'll manage those fortresses and we'll try to build our strengths around those fortresses.
That's one reason why Air Canada and WestJet are becoming a bit more regional. The other consideration is financial. The airlines are still carrying debt from the pandemic, and air travel hasn't fully recovered. So the airlines are trying to keep expenses in check as they compete for passengers. And that's why the two dominant players are focusing so much on their home turfs. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Calgary.
It took a lot of pressure from Ukraine and its allies, but Germany announced today it will provide Ukraine with Leopard 2 battle tanks. That clears the way for other European countries to send tanks, and today the U.S. said it'll also contribute. CBC's Chris Brown reports from Ukraine.
In a Ukrainian city still reeling from a horrendous Russian attack, there was finally a reason for a small bit of elation. 46 were killed in Dnipro just over a week ago by a Russian missile. Natalia and her son Stanislav were left homeless. This is huge support, she said, of Germany's decision to send Leopard 2 tanks. The Leopards are to protect Ukrainians, said her son. I think this decision will help us win, said Andrei Belyaev. Russia is a terrorist state on a global scale. On social media, Ukrainians campaigned to make the tank deal happen, wearing leopard clothing, dressing up in spots. For a while, Germany appeared to be wavering, even as the pressure mounted. Finally, its chancellor rose in parliament.
Wirklich Krieg in Europa.
There really is a war in Europe, not far away from here in Berlin, said Olaf Scholz, as he asked Germans to trust him and resist fearing the move could trigger a bigger confrontation between Russia and NATO. But many Germans are fearful, so Germany only acted after the United States also agreed to send its advanced Abrams tanks too.
The United States has worked in lockstep with our allies and partners around the world to make sure the Ukrainian people are in the strongest possible position to defend their nation.
Of course, Vladimir Putin's parallel reality has Russia as the victim. He told university students he's saving what he called historical Russian territories under threat. The new tanks will burn, vowed a Kremlin spokesman. If other European countries send their Leopards too, the tanks could be a game changer on a battlefield that's become difficult for Ukraine, even though Russia has suffered immense casualties too. Ukrainian senior soldier Kirilo Dorlenko has just returned from the front, where he works as part of a command team. The next step will be training the tank crews. The ammunition is new, and you need to be very familiar with how to use the tanks tactically and understand how they work. Ukraine is getting powerful new weaponry, but the logistics are challenging, including transporting tanks almost twice as heavy as any they have now, as well as fixing and fueling them. Chris Brown, CBC News, Dnipro.
For a lot of people, the speed of life seems to be increasing at a daunting pace, but in Edmonton, one grocery store is hitting the brakes. It's offering shoppers a chance to get out of the express lane. CBC's Julia Wong took the off-ramp from the fast track to check out the slow lane.
Hello, my dear.
It's pretty obvious.
Jason Rutledge likes to chat.
And what are you up to this evening?
The Sobeys cashier's infectious energy often draws a crowd.
When you ask, why do they come to me? I have no idea. But I do know, like, for me, I come here for them.
So the Edmonton grocery store started a social slow lane where people can take as long as they want.
It was fine. I can turn any lane into a slow lane.
Because I'm retired now, so I have nothing but time.
In a world of express lanes and self-checkouts, this lane is a reminder it's okay to slow down and have a chat.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Hello, Jason.
It's great to see you again.
The pandemic created the need. The store had the right people for the job.
COVID's kind of isolated us, or it's sort of divided us. They were there for social interaction. They were there for, really to get their soul's worth, get a little bit of love from Jason, I guess.
Encounters can range from mere seconds to many minutes.
That's the thing.
And can vary from sports to work to the deeply personal.
Because you never know. Like, every day is something new and exciting, and it's crazy. I love it.
And that little bit of love can go a long way.
All right.
In general, if I have some time, I really would. I really like this kind of contact.
Before I came in here, it was like, blah. And now he makes you laugh. And it makes you feel better.
For Rutledge, the check out is all about checking in on others.
I look at the time that I have with these people as our conversations especially are very sacred to me.
Conversations that are good for the soul.
You have a great day, brother.
Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Oh, I love that story. Still ahead, the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. After becoming a parent, a lot of people notice their home seems to be full of toys. Two moms wanted to address that, so they started a toy rental business. As CBC's Talia Ricci reports, the goal is to reduce clutter and be more sustainable.
Can you show everybody how you play with this one, please?
As is the case with most toddlers, this excitement is often short-lived. It's something this mom wanted to plan ahead for.
You get toys, your baby is interested in them for a while, and then, inevitably they lose interest. And in a traditional model where you're buying, you're stuck with that clutter. Let's say that he loved this.
Before her son was even born, she did some research online and came across the Toy Exchange Club. Basically, the idea is renting the toys instead of buying them.
I was overwhelmed with the idea of how to play with my child, and I also did not want to have my living room overrun with plastic and toy clutter.
For the founders, the idea was born out of their experience being moms, not wanting clutter around the house, but also wanting to keep toys out of the landfill.
So families receive a box of 7 to 8 toys for 3 months. They also receive with that box a guide on how to play with each toy and what development milestones your child should be reaching within that time period. At the end of the 3 months, families return the box in exchange for a new box of toys that are more challenging.
The toys are Montessori inspired. They're all wooden. They are curated specifically to support a child's age and developmental stage. I hope that we can sort of reframe the way that families think about toys and the fact that toys are not, we don't need to own them, especially in those early years. They're outgrown so quickly.
As more people try to shop sustainably, the Toronto Environmental Alliance says businesses that focus on a sharing economy are becoming more popular. It's a trend that's happening in the clothing industry too.
When it comes to things like toys or even clothing, being able to share or borrow or rent them instead of owning it yourself is a really great way that we can reduce waste, save money, and reduce the environmental impact.
Hey, should we put these ones in?
Sonia hopes the idea inspires other parents to keep the planet in mind.
My hope is really that more families and more parents understand that there are options, and you don't have to sacrifice what you want for your children just because you want to do it sustainably.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
CBC meteorologist John Sauder is back. John, we're starting to feel some colder air. Where's that coming from?
Yeah, once we get through this next little snowy system from the northwest, it is going to move in quite quickly. We're going to start with a look at some current temperatures and around the province, around the Winnipeg area right now, -14, -16 in Steinbach. Out to the west, temperatures pretty similar, even a little bit warmer. Melita, Dauphin, Swan River, mid-minus teens back through Kenora, Red Lake right now at -18. And then across the north, we've got Churchill, Gillam really feeling the chill, and really temperatures haven't budged much off of that over the last few days. I want to show you some expected snowfall across northern Manitoba in the next 12 hours. And we see some double-digit amounts in the west, Thompson about 6. Not much in Churchill, but Churchill will have very high wind chill factors over the next little while as well. Tonight's forecast starting in northwestern Ontario, temps what you would expect and a generally cloudy sky overnight, and it's really just all about the cloud here in the southeast overnight. Not much in the way of snow at all. Might see a few flurries up around the Barons River area. Just cloudy here in Winnipeg, low of -20, and then a few evening flurries in Swan River, mid-minus teens generally for overnight lows. Across the north tonight, we see some evening flurries around Norway House, frostbite in just minutes with a chilling low of -34 tonight in Churchill and a high tomorrow of only -27. Generally 2 to 4 centimeters, but we could see those higher amounts in the west by Friday morning, certainly. And then here in the south, we'll see periods of snow, 5 to 10 centimeters around Swan River and Dauphin, 5 centimeters or so in through the Brandon area. And it really gets going afternoon and through the evening the farther east you go, and that includes the Red River Valley and then into northwestern Ontario. It's generally a sun-cloud mix tomorrow, highs around -11 to -12. The snow starts this far east much later in the day tomorrow.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome, Emily.
Well, still ahead, Churchill might be the polar bear capital of the world, but it's also home to about 57,000 beluga whales with almost no environmental protection. We'll learn more after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. When people think of Manitoba's coastline of Hudson Bay, they usually think of polar bears, but it's also home to the largest congregation of beluga whales in the world. Oceans North is a research and advocacy group for ocean conservation in Canada. They're hosting an event in Winnipeg tonight with Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. They want to raise awareness about the need to protect belugas. I spoke yesterday with Chris Debicki of Oceans North. Chris, what do you want Manitobans to know about beluga whales and their population here?
Well, that's a great question. I guess, first of all, Manitobans should know and be really proud of the fact that along Manitoba's coastline is habitat for the world's largest submarine population of beluga. It's actually about a third of the world's population. And so, you know, we often think of ourselves, and obviously for good reason, as a prairie province and prairie people, but that obviously ignores our amazing northern Manitoba, which includes the Hudson Bay coastline and 3 major estuaries, which are part of that really special habitat for belugas.
So what kind of protections are in place for belugas and what more is needed?
Well, there are protections in some parts of the world for beluga, including the St. Lawrence Seaway, and other parts of Canada. But this area, Manitoba's coastline and the part of Hudson Bay just off of our coastline, remains completely unprotected, despite the fact that, as I mentioned, a third of the world's population resides here.
Wow. So is that something you're trying to work to raise awareness about?
Yeah, it sure is. So we're working to raise awareness about the important role we have actually as a province, as caretakers for that coastline, for the watersheds that flow into it, for these estuaries, the Seal River, the Churchill, and the Nelson, and also really to foreground the connection we have, that those belugas have, between Manitoba and Inuit communities all along Hudson Bay.
So, of course, there's a reception happening at Kalmayuk, the new Inuit Art Center at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. Why was that spot chosen for this event?
Well, it's the perfect location for an event like this. So, as you may know, the Winnipeg Art Gallery and the Kalmayuk Gallery is home to the world's largest collection of Inuit art. And Inuit art is really special and really reminds us of our connection, or often reminds us of our connection with the natural environment and with many of the Arctic species that are culturally important, artistically important, and also remain to this day an important part of regional diets, especially in Nunavut and Nunavik in Hudson Bay.
Wow. And there's a global forum for ocean conservation happening February in Vancouver. How does the event in Winnipeg tie into that?
That's a meeting in which various stakeholders, as well as policymakers, come together to look at how countries like Canada can meet our targets for 2030 in terms of marine conservation. And so this is a local event that connects us to that international conversation.
And will some of the things you hear about at the event be included at that conference?
Well, we certainly hope so. And we're trying to use this event as a way to remind Manitobans that we also have a role to play in marine conservation. Parks Canada has indicated a willingness to explore protection options for Western Hudson Bay, including what's called a National Marine Conservation Area, which is the ocean equivalent of a national park. And it's really up to Manitobans to signal that we approve of and support this kind of initiative, and that we do want to take responsibility for the ocean in our backyard.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Chris.
Hey, my pleasure.
Still ahead, John Sauder is back with your 7-day forecast, and we'll have the Daily Lift. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Your 7-day forecast is coming right up. I wanted to show you the almanac because last year on this day, it was really, really cold. The morning temperature was close to minus 36, and we had a daytime high of minus 23. Now, none of that was record breaking, but minus 23 daytime highs, that's the kind of weather that's moving our way by Saturday. Got to get through the snow and the wind first. We'll be shoveling a little bit on Friday, and there will be some blowing snow in open areas. And then that kind of weather just continues, minus 24 on Sunday and Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday next week, still just as cold. Morning temperatures will be right around minus 29 to minus 30, right through that stretch.
Wow, chilly weather coming up.
Absolutely.
For 9 days every January, a normally sleepy and quiet village high in the Swiss Alps is filled with hot air.
Hot air balloons, that is. It is a spectacular sight, and it's also tonight's Daily Lift.
This is the 40th anniversary of the Hot Air Balloon Festival, and there are 60 balloons from 15 countries. The event attracts up to 35,000 spectators. An unusual feature of this event is the unique winds that change direction during the day. They allow the balloons to fly out in one direction in the morning, then turn around and fly back in the opposite direction in the afternoon. This year's festival wraps up on Sunday.
Ah, it's a fish. Yeah. Have you ever been in a hot air balloon?
Yes, but it was tethered, so we didn't get very high, but it was still exciting.
You know, as a pilot, I like to be able to steer a little bit, so, you know, I like hot air balloons, though. They're fun.
Beautiful, too. And that was the CBC Winnipeg News. We'll be back at 11, and Janet Stewart will be back tomorrow. Have a great evening.
Good night.